If I was about to forget every comic story I'd ever read, but could first record a message for myself just before the mind wipe, this would be the result.
You're a wonderful man in your satin
Condor Man, da-da-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues, where I talk about my favorite DC comics of the past that are still affordably available today, blabbing about why they're special to me and what, if anything, they might have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, this series does freely contain spoilers in every episode, but I think even spoiled, the stories I feature are still worth reading. For more info about the intent of this series and what to expect from it, check out the video on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel titled Essential Issues Series Introduction. Okay, so today, I've really been looking forward to this a lot. I'm sharing my pick for the essential comic book origin story for one of my all-time favorite characters, The Flash. Now, you've got choices when it comes to The Flash. Which Flash are we talking about? Jay Garrick is the original Golden Age Flash, but not the one that most people think of when they think of The Flash. Barry Allen is often that Flash. He's the Silver Age Flash who died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I talked about in a previous episode of this series, but Barry has since made a comeback in the DC Universe. But honestly, before Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was as simplistic and uninteresting a character as any of them. You know, a Boy Scout without a relatable personality, as so many Silver Age characters were. His recent return did come with a revamped origin story and a new take on his character that added, I think, some much-needed layers to his motives as a character, but he's still not near as interesting as the Flash I know and love best, and that's Wally West. And for his origin story, I point you to Flash numbers 62 through 65, collected in the trade paperback titled Flash, Born to Run. Now, when I first read up on Wally's origin, early on in reading comics, I thought it was insanely stupid. I was like, what is this? This is like he's like he was Kid Flash, and now he's Flash. I mean, what in the world is going on here, you know? He basically has the same origin story as the Barry Allen Flash. He was his sidekick, and then, Barry Allen was struck by lightning that went through a whole like a rack of chemicals that then struck him, and the combination of the lightning and the chemicals gave him his super speed powers. Well, then he's, explaining that to Wally one day, and then the same thing happens to these, the lightning bolt strikes through the chemicals, hits Wally, gives him super speed so that now he can be Flash's sidekick, Kid Flash. I mean, what the crap? Super, super cheesy. But Born to Run takes that cheese and makes it one of the coolest origins in comics. And you might be saying, how in the world did they do that? Well, Wally is the first sidekick, or at least the first notable one. I can't think of any before him that had this happen. He's the first sidekick I know of that took his mentor's place. Other sidekicks, have since grown up and become their own heroes, like Nightwing and whatnot. Wally took up the mantle of his mentor when his mentor fell in Crisis on Infinite Earths, continuing that legacy. And the Flash comic was one of the first I read that really leaned into legacy and history, bringing Jay Garrick, the original Flash, and multiple super speed heroes into the stories on a regular basis, creating kind of a Flash family and really leaning into the history of the DC Universe and its speedsters in particular. Other superhero origin stories could take place in a world where they are the only superhero. But Wally West's origin story depends on him living in a world where superheroes exist, where specifically an original Flash exists who he takes his place. That's Wally's Flash is like a comic fan's comic, you know? Stories with Wally also tend to be character-driven. He is constantly wanting to honor and live up to the memory of Barry Allen. Scripts about Wally West are very often taking us into his mind with what he's thinking, not in a cheesy expositional, thought bubble way, but in a more reflective kind of sense that really at the time I read it was fairly unique among comic books. And yeah, his motives are so interesting because he loves Barry Allen. He has so much respect and love for this man and wants to honor him by the way he carries himself as Barry Allen's replacement as the new Flash. And no, you don't need to know Barry Allen's or Jay Garrick's origin stories to follow this in the least. You just have to accept that Wally lives in a world with superheroes and somehow got lucky enough to become the sidekick of his favorite superhero. And yes, his origin story is impossibly, stupidly lucky, but again, they lean into that. And in fact, later in Wally's run in the comics, they provide answers that revealed that it wasn't just luck, but something more at play that gave Wally his powers. I'm not going to spoil that, but this story is where you would get in on the ground floor for those future revelations. All right, so let's get into the story Born to Run itself. There's no getting around it. The art looks dated to me, largely because it lacks digital coloring and shading, which would come to comics a few years after this was published. But the writing, I think, ages much better, taking us inside Wally's mind as he reflects back on his younger days before he had his powers, struggling to have hope in a home with two fighting parents and a really difficult relationship with his dad. He gets to spend a summer with his Aunt Iris, who is dating Barry Allen. And of course, he doesn't know that Barry Allen is the Flash at this point. Iris wants him to learn to connect with seemingly boring Barry and leaves them alone together for an afternoon. Now, Barry, knowing Wally is a huge Flash fan, arranges a meeting with the Flash. So they get to talking. Wally, of course, is super excited to be with his hero. He asks the Flash how he got his powers, and so the Flash walks him through how it happened, even setting up the rack of chemicals exactly as it was when he was struck by lightning, because he's the Flash, so why not? Then, right in the middle of their conversation, lightning strikes Wally through the chemicals, just like it had done to Barry. But he doesn't get speed right away, to his disappointment. Barry and Wally discover that his speed has to be kind of kick-started by him specifically really just cutting loose with everything he's got. And at that moment when it happens, it's a wish fulfillment fantasy origin story. This downtrodden kid who dreams of being the Flash gets his wish and becomes the happiest kid on Earth. And his joy is just infectious, tapping into your own childlike superpower fantasies. As the story continues, Barry spends the summer training Wally to use his speed, providing some insight into the range and limitations of Wally's powers and how speed can be leveraged. Having super speed is about much more than just running fast. And super speed is applied to, kind of pseudoscience to create some really interesting effects. Eventually, as Barry and Wally worked a case together, Wally caught on to a clue that he would have to act on immediately, independent from the Flash, or risk the criminal getting away for good. This led to disaster as Wally watched his hero and mentor be seemingly murdered in front of him, at which point the story gives weight to Wally's emotional reaction, emphasizing again the love and admiration Wally has for his mentor. Then the story takes another turn as Barry and Wally discover that Wally's super speed powers are progressively destroying his body every time he uses them. And so the boy who had his greatest wish granted now has it stolen away, leaving him in the deeply troubled place he began in, and all the more sad for having a taste of happiness before being robbed of it. If you haven't noticed yet, this story gives a surprising amount of time to slower, character-driven moments than you would ever expect from a book about the fastest man alive, and it's so much richer for doing it. Wally finds himself back at home again, having to deal with his continually strained relationship with his father, who clearly does love him, but also lacks patience and compassion for Wally. Things escalate when Wally runs away straight into a huge storm hitting the town, town, his father goes out to look for him, and both are placed in danger. And Wally's anger toward his father is just increasing until suddenly his father's life is in jeopardy because of the storm. And Wally, at that moment, not only comes to grips with his feelings toward his dad, but also makes a noble sacrifice, and in the process overcomes the lethal side effects of his super speed in the moving climactic scene that establishes Wally as the hero he would continue becoming more and more over the years. In summary, I enjoyed and appreciated this story more this time through than when I first read it years ago. Despite the color technique being older, the pencils still look great to me and work with the writing to convey both the super speed action and the character moments with equal effectiveness. Wally's motivation is so interesting and unique to me. You know, his life as a hero doesn't start because of, say, guilt, arguably, like Spider-Man's journey at least starts out. Or because, say, he wants to fit in, like the X-Men, who just kind of find each other and start doing things together to try to make the world a better place because they feel out of place in the world that they're in. He doesn't become a hero for the sake of vengeance like Batman. Neither is his motive the often poorly handled motivation of wanting to do good purely for the sake of doing good. That's a good motivation, but it's a hard one to write well. Instead, his hero's journey starts with his admiration for a hero and a mentor. He wants to be like the man who just exemplifies goodness and heroism to him. And later in life, he continues being a hero to honor the legacy of this man he admires so much. It's a wonderfully unique motivation that even has some parallels to our lives as Christians, or at least I think it should. You know, it's not that Jesus is merely an admirable hero to us, or that Christians should fantasize about doing the miracles Jesus did, or desire the authority that he has, but our lives are meant to be lived in response to his life. Wally wants to be like Barry because he saw how Barry selflessly treated other people. We are not only motivated by how Christ treated others, but primarily by how he treats us. Romans 5:8 in the ESV says, God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And 1 John 4:19 says, we love because he first loved us. I really loved coming back to The Flash Born to Run. In my Essential Issues journey so far, this is the story I've most enjoyed reading again. And if you decide to check it out, I hope that you will too. The collection includes a few short bonus stories that are not being considered as a part of this review, but may or may not add value to your purchase. Right now, you can get Mark Waid's The Flash Born to Run for less than $10 after shipping, or for $11 if you want to get it on Kindle over at Amazon.com. So we've covered the essential origin stories for my personal favorites among the most popular DC characters. Now it's time to broaden out a little bit to multiple heroes at once, including Aquaman and Martian Manhunter, as next time I share with you my pick for the essential origin story for the Justice League of America. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.